everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of my video blog, which is an extension of my blog, Hanna Kohfeld and artfuljourney.com, where my mission is to create a community of loving kindness through art, mindfulness, and the exploration of the human condition. And today, we're going to explore the human condition a little bit through the eyes of my guest, Jarrod Ward. Jarrod is a musician. He is my partner, and he's traveling around the world with me. Welcome to episode 1, Jarrod.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's just start off a little bit by talking about you and who you are as an artist, as a musician. How did you come to this path of being a musician? What were your drivers, and where did you start, and where are you now today?
I've always loved music, obviously. But how I got started actually playing music, I took piano lessons as a young kid. As many young kids, I hated it. And my parents, I told them that, and they pulled me out. It was okay with them. And I didn't get back into music again until my freshman year of college. I had 2 hallmates who played the guitar, and, I loved the sound of it. I had just had a B.B. King Greatest Hits album, loved the blues. So that winter break, freshman year of college, I went home. And my dad had just won a guitar from his company in some kind of raffle or something, and it was a Mexican Fender Stratocaster. That's a nice guitar for a gift. So I took that back to college with me after break, and had my 2 hallmates show me how to play the thing. And from there I just started teaching myself. Fast forward 4 years.
How do you teach yourself guitar?
Oh man, a lot of ear training, a lot of sounding it out, listening to old albums and trying to play what they played, figuring all that out. They showed me the chords, the basic chords, but from there I was able to teach myself. There's YouTube as well, which is huge nowadays. So yeah, I learned how to play, and just, I played for hours every day. I remember when I first started, one of my good friends, I would play with my door open, and one of my good friends down the hall, it may have been exam week or maybe he had an exam, but he came to my door and was like, "Look, I love you, but I can't listen to this anymore. I need to shut this door. Like, I can't do this." And I don't blame him.
I know how he feels.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
I
don't blame him
every day.
But I back then I couldn't play a lick, and so I understood. But fast forward 4 years from there, my senior year of college, one of the guys who originally showed me how to play, me and him got a gig playing at a bar, and so we'd play there on Tuesday nights, and that was my first live gig. And, I love the feeling of playing live in front of people. It's exhilarating. You get energy from them.
Were you nervous? What was that
Absolutely.
like? Did you feel like you were going to throw up?
Just sweating from head to toe. I'm a heavy sweater as it is, and when I start sweating, my fingers start sweating. They're sliding on the strings, but it still went well. We played pretty good.
Cool.
After college, I went back to Cincinnati, where I'm from, met up with 2 guys, and played in a project called the Justin Wade Project, where I learned a lot. They were more R&B, where I was more blues heavy at the time, so I learned a lot of new chords, a lot of new songs, a lot of new style. After that, moved to Colorado, met up with some other musicians who were also from Ohio. We formed a group there.
How do musicians go about finding each other? What is that like?
You just do. It just happens. You go somewhere and they say, "Oh, you play this? Well, I have a friend who plays that. You guys should hang out." You meet that person. I have a friend who plays this, And when I first met the guys out in Colorado, they had already had a band. And so I was just coming in. I knew one of the drummers, so I would come in and jam with them. And after, weeks of jamming, they finally were like, "Hey, you want to just do this with us?" And I was like, "Absolutely. I got nobody else. Like, let's do this." So, we played together all the way up until I left Colorado.
Okay, let's start right there. Left Colorado.
Yeah.
We get this question a lot, like why and how the nomadic lifestyle. Can you explain, first of all, what the nomadic lifestyle is? And second of all, how did you get there? And third, why?
The nomadic lifestyle is just picking up and going from place to place, seeing the world in your own eyes. And, you're not sedentary. You're constantly moving. What do they say? A rolling stone gathers no moss. You're constantly moving around and learning new cultures, learning new languages, learning new challenges, whether it be transportation or anything. But yeah, I got into travel. The first time I really traveled, like really traveled, was 2015. I volunteered to go teach music at a school in Africa, in Tanzania, a school for the Maasai children. And on the way to Africa, my brother had a great idea. He said, well, why don't we do a mini Euro trip for 10 days before you go to Africa? I'm like, let's do this.
That's
So
awesome.
we went to Madrid, Paris, and Amsterdam and had a blast. You know, we always have a good time when we're together. And then from there, he went back to the States, and I went and lived in Africa for 2 months.
And what was it like to live in Africa? That seems like a drastic change from the U.S.
It definitely was. It was beautiful. The atmosphere, the people, everything was just
Where
beautiful.
specifically in Africa were you?
Tanzania.
Okay, so when you are thinking stereotypical Africa, is Tanzania like people dancing and people just those big smiles that you see? Is that what it's like in Tanzania? Tell us a little bit about that.
And yes, in many different ways, because when many people picture Africa, they also picture animals.
Right.
And in Tanzania, you had the Serengeti, where I got to spend some time camping. And so you see all the animals. And then the Maasai people themselves, they're one of the oldest tribes in Africa, you know, and they were a nomadic people for a long time, up until the government started to regulate where they could live.
Right.
And so, like, just seeing them with, you know, they don't have nearly as much as Americans do in regards to materialistic things, nothing, but they're still...
But not just materialistic things. I think more just like conveniences of water and food and things like that. It's even more than that, right?
It's more than that. I mean, when I was there, the wells dried up. It was during the hot season. The wells around us...
What's the hot season?
When was I there? Oh my God. Well, I'm not a hot weather person. Crazy enough, I went to Africa during the hottest part of the year, but Fahrenheit, it was probably in the hundreds, like the low 100s.
Every day.
Every day.
Sun shining.
But it was
dry?
a dry heat. It was a dry heat. It wasn't humid like
Right.
where I'm from, so it was bearable. You know,
Okay.
you go in the shade, you're cool.
Yeah.
But it was during that hot, dry season that I was there, and the wells in the villages around the school had all dried up. But luckily at the school, we had a giant borehole which dug much deeper than their wells. So part of the time I was there, they would line up outside the school fence every day after school so they could come in and get their water so they could bathe, they could cook, they could
Right.
clean, they could wash themselves. And it was...
Yeah.
It was a totally different environment from day one when I first woke up, and I heard them singing, you know, in the common area, the lunchroom, the auditorium, and it was just beautiful to wake up to that. And that was my first time in Africa, and it felt good.
So when you came back to the States, I kind of feel like when I traveled abroad and came back to the States, I had this reverse culture shock, I guess is what I call it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had it too. What was that like? And tell us exactly how and when you experienced that reverse culture shock.
I can pinpoint it. I can pinpoint it down to an exact moment. So while I was teaching at the school, only one of the rooms in the office in the entire school had internet. So I was
Right.
not on my phone. I was in the moment, living every day, all day. You know, at nighttime, maybe I'd go in for a little bit to get on the internet, but that was it.
Yeah.
And so...
So your screen time was maybe 15 minutes a day.
Minimal. It was minimal. I'd watch movies to go to bed, but that wasn't using the internet. They had a whole slew of DVDs there.
DVDs.
So
not
I would
VHS?
they had those too, but I would just, you know, recycle through these same movies every night.
Yeah.
But yeah, very little screen time. You're just living in the moment, living real. And the moment reverse culture shock hit me was when I landed in the Amsterdam airport, and I went to a bar. It had been a long flight just to get there.
Yeah.
I went to a bar to grab a drink, to sit there by myself, and I look around this bar, and everyone is on their phone, head down, just buried in their phone. I would see couples at their tables. They're not speaking to each other. They're both just necks broken, buried into their phones. And I'm like, where am I? What is this? Like, the people aren't connecting. There's no vibes. It's so just dry from what I came from. So that was shocking. And from that point, I vowed, like, I'm going to minimize the amount of time I spend letting this little device control my life or my connections with humanity, like anyone.
Right.
And so.
And do you think this is where your travel bug came from, or your desire to see the world?
Yeah, that trip, that whole Europe and with my brother, and then Tanzania, that just opened my eyes to so many things. And I'm like, there's so much more out there to see that I want to see and experience. And the only way to do this is if I travel. So I do it.
And so when was it from when you got back from Tanzania to taking off for Spain, our first destination? How many years, months did that take for that to come to fruition?
It was a total of about 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yep.
From going to Tanzania to deciding we're leaving the U.S.
Not deciding, because I decided.
That's true, we decided before that.
But to actually physically leaving, it was almost 2.5 years on the dot. I had volunteered when I went to the school in Tanzania. I volunteered. One of the owners of the school also owns a business in Denver, and so we had chatted before I left, and he knew, my work history, and he was like, "When you come back, maybe I'll have an opening at my company." And sure enough, he did, which was incredible. He's a great guy, and so after that, I went there. I worked with him, worked for him, and with him for 2.5 years. It was a great experience. But even while working there, he knew I had a travel bug. He has a travel bug himself, so he totally understood me. That is also where we met. And so, just seeing all of the places he had been to as well, and from just coming back from my own trip, I was like, I got to do this. It's so inspiring, to hear his journeys when he would come back and tell us, how was it? Oh, it was this, it was that. And I'm like, someday,
Right.
And so
fast forward,
we
decide to move to Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And our intentions were, we're going to move to Spain, we're just going to live there for a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's literally all we knew. And then we decided how to get there. How do you go about doing that? So tell us, how did we go about living in Spain for a year legally?
That is, okay. Legally, we figured out, hey, what can we possibly do in order to legally live there for a year? So we looked at the visa situation. We checked out what kind of jobs most people have that go and live abroad, and sure enough, it was English teaching.
Right.
So we decided, hey, let's just, there was a program in Barcelona to get your certification, so let's sign up and go do that. And that gives us, the legality to live there for a year. And work for 20 hours. Yeah.
Cool. So let's get into the meat of the human condition in the eyes of a traveler. The 3 topics I really want to dive into is going through traveling the world through your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, as an American, as a person of color,
yes,
and as a musician artist, okay? So those are kind of the 3 areas I want to dive into. And I want to do that through the different cities that we experience. So let's start in Barcelona. Just in general, when we landed in Barcelona, what was the sentiment like? What were your feelings like? And what was the vibe like?
The vibe was really cool. It was really artsy. It was a big city. Mm-hmm. It was very metropolitan. There were people from all over. There were languages being spoken from all over. The most consistent, obviously, were Spanish and Catalan. But you just soak it all in because you're just fresh and new, know? And so you're thrown into a totally new, uncomfortable environment. You're just a sponge. You're eating it all up, sucking it in. It was very artistic. There were people busking. As soon as we got off the plane and then the trains, there were people busking everywhere.
What's busking?
Okay, busking is when you're playing music in the streets. You're busking, and they were in the tunnels, but it was more scheduled in Spain.
In Barcelona.
I found out, in Barcelona. Sorry, I found out that you had to go through a series of getting a permit, and then you had to get put on a schedule, like a rotation of where and when you could play. But then there's.
And at that time, were you ready? You had landed in Barcelona. You didn't speak the language very well.
No.
Were you ready just to go onto the street and start playing music? I mean, that's got to be nerve-wracking.
It was nerve-wracking, but I mean, I heard others doing it, and I heard how they were doing it, and I'm like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I didn't immediately right away because obviously we had school, and it was, there was a lot. It was quite intensive. But I still played at the house. Luckily, the Airbnb we stayed at had a piano that the guy allowed me to play, so I would play that. And I would just learn more and more guitar, and as I would walk around hearing other people, I'd get influenced by other styles, and I'd be like, ooh, I'm going to add that to my repertoire, and I'm going to try to do this too. But yeah, I was not ready immediately to just jump out there and get going. I was,
Well, there's the fear of, what are they going to think?
Yeah.
Is this legal? Am I going to get thrown in jail?
There's a lot.
Are they
And my
gonna take
instrument,
guitar?
no.
So, let's talk a little bit about being a person of color in Barcelona. What was that like? Did you feel well received? Was it uncomfortable? What was that like?
Not at all. Barcelona is so big. It's
Yeah.
so big, and there's people, like I said, from all over the world. It's just like a New York City, you know?
Yeah.
Like a person of color is a person of color is a person of color. There's people
Right.
everywhere, you know? And so I jumped right in. I wasn't stared at. There was no issues.
Okay.
The only barrier really was my Spanish speaking level at the time.
Okay.
And that was it.
All right. Let's go from Barcelona. We did some travel throughout Spain on the coast,
Mhm.
but we decided to move to Granada.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Granada because for both of us, it was a transformational place to live.
It was.
Tell us a little bit about what it was like just to walk around in Granada.
All right, so I will say had a narrow-minded view when I first, like day one of moving to Granada. Pouty is a good way to say it because in Barcelona there was so much, music of different kinds and, different genres, and in
that
Granada.
You can relate to better.
That's true. But in Granada, it was one of the original homes of flamenco music, and that was the style
and what's
there.
flamenco music?
It's Spanish-style music, finger style, a lot of fast strumming using your fingers, and just, a lot of Frisian.
When you think of Spain and you think of the music, that's what you're talking about.
That's what,
Okay.
yeah. When you hear that, that's
Okay.
flamenco. And so, Granada was one of the homes of it. So I was nervous, like, God, if I go and play, are these people even going to appreciate my style, which was
Right.
heavily blues influenced, R&B, soul, funk, and it was really nerve-wracking for me, and I was kind of like pouty and in the dumps about it. But then one of our first days sitting there, we went to eat at Plaza Largo up top, and we're sitting in this big square, and sure enough, this guy pulls up with his electric guitar, and he's a Spanish-looking guy.
Yeah.
Pulls up with his electric guitar and his speaker, and he starts wailing some Lenny by Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I'm like, get out, like
Right.
this, okay.
And then I was kind of like snarky and being
Yeah.
like, look, you can fit in.
Exactly. And so, sure enough, from that moment, I was like, there's no reason I can't do this. And he's playing my style, then going around, and people are tipping him. Like, I can do this. But yeah, generally walking around Granada, it was a beautiful musician's paradise. There were people playing all over, different instruments all over, different styles and genres all over. I made a lot of friends by playing in the streets with people. People would come up and join me. There was also a lot of art being sold, a lot of art being created right in front of you. There was the Alhambra, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. There was so much art around. It was such an inspirational place of just, art in your face all the time.
Yeah. And like when you were walking around, so you're walking around the streets and you're seeing people playing music, selling art, making jewelry, beautiful scenery. And what about the vibe? Like, we lived in Albaicin, so I think there was this aura of creativity from
everywhere
centuries before.
It really was. I mean, we lived in a building that was built in the 16th century, and it was a beautiful building with a Carmen, which is basically an entryway, kind of an open entryway that typically had an olive plant or a lemon tree or something in the Carmen. But there was just music and art everywhere, and you'd go up to the park, to the Huerto San Carlo, and there was the gypsies also, and they would have their drum circles, and they'd be doing their acrobatics and their trips and their juggling, and there'd be music circles and people drumming along late nights. Like everywhere there was music and art, and it's just, you're in this creative environment, you can't help but just take advantage.
Yeah. What about the diversity there? Let's talk about that.
It wasn't as diverse as Barcelona. Obviously, it's not nearly as big of a city, but it was still diverse. I mean, you had people from Spain, obviously. You had a lot of Moroccans that lived there. You had a lot of people from Senegal, a lot of Africans. And so you'd see blacks, you'd see white. There was also a tourist city, so you'd have tourists that were a lot from China, Russia, big groups, and just people from all over. So it was still diverse. I felt I fit right in. I would hang out with the Senegalese, kick it with them sometimes. I'd go hang out in the streets, and also by being a street musician, you meet people from all over as well.
Right.
And so I was hanging with people from France and Spain and Morocco and England and everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was just a cool collaborative environment.
So when we're meeting people from all over the world, not just Spanish people, but from England and Africa, and I imagine there's a lot of conversations. I imagine I was there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conversations about what it is to be an American and what they think America is.
Yeah.
And then us describing our experience as an American. So what were those conversations like? And
it was, I mean, obviously the majority of people think that Americans are wealthy, especially if you're able to travel, which is quite the opposite.
Yeah.
A lot of the questions were, why did you elect Trump? Do the American people really feel like this? Do most of America feel like this? And that was always a fun one.
It's an interesting conversation because we're both on the same page about how we feel about Trump, but we're also both from areas that could have voted for him.
Absolutely.
So we could speak to
both sides. Yeah. Then there was a lot of questions and conversation about healthcare.
Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of the guys in the UK, all of them, have free healthcare, and then when we're telling them, oh, I'm paying $200 a month just to healthcare, or $150 a month to healthcare, they're like, that is absurd. And like, do you go to the doctor? No, never.
Right.
But and then even when I got hurt, they were like, well, did you get your surgery for free? No, I still paid thousands of dollars for both legs that I injured, on top of paying my $200 a month for healthcare.
Right.
So that was always a fun one.
But when we were having those conversations, we couldn't there is no full circle of making that right, because even though they get healthcare, they pay a lot more taxes than we do, and they're lying how long they have to wait to see a doctor when something happens to them. There wasn't a clear-cut solution. Like, we don't have a great healthcare system, and they have a better one as far as finances, but there was never to have that conversation and a different point of view from a different country that does it differently, I think was a reminder that there isn't there's not some one-stop solution that's going to solve all the problems. It's so complicated, it's insane. So it was what it is. It is what it is. So we touched on diversity, and we touched on artistic. So let's go to the next destination.
Okay.
Which was Varna, Bulgaria.
All right.
When I talk to my family and friends, why is a lot of the question, and it was January. We were there actually.
Middle of January.
No, November, December, January. So very cold months.
Oh, yeah.
So why did we go there? Why didn't we just go to like France or Italy or anywhere in Western Europe? Why Bulgaria?
As soon as
dog. This one's not stray. They're usually stray.
As soon as our visas were up in Spain, we had to go outside the Schengen zone for 90 days. And the Schengen zone is basically all of Western Europe, so it was just something we had to do. And pretty much what it left us to was the eastern bloc of Europe. They're outside the Schengen zone. We also met a great friend and his family who lived in Granada, and they had just moved to Varna, Bulgaria, because that's where his wife is from.
So he's an American.
He's an American.
He was living in Spain for 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
Met and married a beautiful Bulgarian woman and had children, and then they decided to.
Children grew up in Spain,
right.
But they can speak English, Spanish, and Bulgarian.
Right.
Like brilliant little girls.
So they decide to go there, and so that the kids can experience their mother's culture.
Yep.
And we decide to go see them.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, we have to go outside. We have to go to Eastern Europe. They're living in Eastern Europe. We've never been to Bulgaria nor Varna. It's on the Black Sea.
Yeah.
So let's go have an adventure in Varna for 2 months. And
so describe to the viewers what Varna was like, where we lived in Varna. What was that like?
Just where we lived in general. It's a vacation spot for the summertime, when I guess it's just popping. There's people everywhere. But obviously during the winter, we're lived
'Cause
in
we're
the
like
resort
300
area.
meters from the beach, right?
Yeah, about
Yeah.
that, and about a 10-minute bus ride from the city center. But it was, I mean, it was where all the resorts are, and they were all completely shut down, pitch black. Even in our complex, there were about 5 buildings that probably had 75 to 100 units in them each. And there may have been 20 occupied units in the entire compound, and then there's just closed or dilapidated or pitch black resorts everywhere,
Right.
all around us. So
So we were kind of
yeah, we were in a secluded area.
away from people.
Yep. We were very isolated. You know, we'd walk down the streets would be pitch black. I'd carry my hunting knife everywhere we went, especially at nights, just to feel safe. It was a very secluded place.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
But you say you carried a knife to feel safe, but did you ever feel unsafe?
I never felt unsafe. No.
Yeah, me neither.
No.
Yeah.
So that was where the area we lived. That's what that was like.
Okay. And how do you feel you were received as a black man there?
In Varna, it was a completely different vibe than it was in Spain. That was noticed from the start. As soon as we set foot there, you know, I I might as well have had 6 eyeballs
Right.
and 14 legs or something. I was just stared at beyond belief, and I'm not saying like a little glance. I'm talking like a hard
Like
stare, like
turning your head kind
and
of stare.
yeah, and it didn't matter where I was. I could be on the bus, and the person sitting across from me on the bus, you know, instead of politely, you know, looking out the window or something, they just sit across from me and just stare in disbelief and not say a word.
Right.
And I remember one time we were sitting downtown. We were just sitting on a bench, just hanging out, and there was an older gentleman walking by, and he started staring at me from about 30 yards out. And so I didn't break contact either. I'm like, he's gonna stare at me, I'm gonna stare right back.
Right.
And so we just stared the whole time, and he didn't even stop staring once he passed me. He kept
turned
staring,
his head.
turned his head, kept walking and staring.
At that point, I started laughing out loud.
Because it was absurd. It was kind of funny.
It was kind of funny.
And he almost ran into somebody because he
Right.
could not stop staring. And I'm like, my God, like, is there something on my face? What is happening?
Yeah.
So it was, at first it was shocking. It was, I mean, the language was already difficult enough,
Yeah.
and then being
The
in a new
alphabet's
place,
different, the signs are
everything, and then to have everyone staring at you everywhere you went. I remember also I was standing in the city center one day, and this kid comes up to me. He's probably in his late teens, early 20s. And he's, yo, bro, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from America. Oh, yeah, you from Jamaica? I'm like, no, I'm from America. Africa? I'm like, I'm African American. Oh, you South American? I'm like, oh my God, man, no,
Yeah.
I'm from North America. I'm from Colorado. I'm from America. And
But
then
even in
yeah.
Spain, people didn't automatically assume
No.
America.
No, I
For
got
either of us,
for
actually.
either of us.
I got Are you Spanish all
Yeah.
the time? And you.
I got everything across the
You
board. I
did.
got
You got
African, I got Puerto Rican, I got Cuban,
Cuban
I
a
got
lot.
any place that you could think of that has someone of color. You from there? I'm like, no, I'm from
But
America.
with locks, someone of color with locks. I think that was
Sure.
for them.
Smoke weed, bro.
Right.
Everywhere in Barcelona, everyone coming
Coffee
up to
shop.
me.
Coffee
Coffee shop.
shop.
You smoke weed, bro? I'm like, oh my God.
So the curiosity.
Yeah. That is.
I
yeah.
actually call it curiosity. I think I'm jumping ahead of myself right now. How did that make you feel?
That's the
first?
best way to put it. Is you get stared at, and yeah, of course, at first it's uncomfortable, but then you get used to it and you realize this is not out of hatred by any means. Like, these
Right.
people are curious. You're in their country. They don't see too many black people, especially in Bulgaria. I learned that a
Varna,
lot of
too.
Nigerians go there for like medical school or university there. But other than that, especially Varna, you don't see black people. You don't see people
Well, we
of color.
actually saw a black guy come into the Sofia
Yeah, bus station.
and it was midnight,
Mm-hmm.
and
He loo-
you weren't looking at him, but I saw him come in, and he was staring at you and staring at you and staring at you, and eventually I was like, babe, that guy wants your attention.
Oh,
And then you two started talking.
immediately.
And it was like,
Immediately.
it was like for me as a person watching the experience, it was like, I have this connection with this person because of the color of my skin, and I feel like I can tell this person anything. You guys had this
We shared
30-minute
everything.
conversation about your whole entire lives.
Yeah.
And I think it was just the common connection of we're going through the same thing.
Absolutely.
I'm
I will
just
speak on
speaking
that.
from
I'll speak on
being
that with
outside.
you.
Tell me what you
I mean, he was
like for you.
Sure enough, he was from Nigeria, but he lived in Varna now. His family lived there too, and he
Not
had
in Varna, in Sofia.
and so they lived in Borgsva or
Right.
somewhere.
It's
He was
close to
taking
this.
a
Yeah.
because he was taking a bus to where he was living.
Right.
But either way, he had gone to university in Sofia. Sure enough, but yeah, I mean that black connection, that is real. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If I see a black person, a black guy sees me, like you give them the nod. It is innate.
You told me about that
It
because
is
I
innate.
noticed it when we were walking around in other countries,
Always.
in other cities, and you would do the nod. You didn't really do it in the U.S. as much as you did.
It depends on where you are in the U.S. If you're places with a lot of with a heavy black population, and you're not gonna nod at everybody. Hey, what's up, bro? Like, no, but it's like when you're in a different country and there are a few of you, or in a different place there are a few of you, it's kind of just like a nod of recognition. Like, I see you, you see me. Like, we got this.
And
we're in this.
Comics on stand-up comedy talk about that a lot.
Oh yeah.
When they are traveling and going to other places. So, what does it feel like? I kind of think you might have been the only black person in Varna. So, what does it feel like to be in that position?
It's not a position that I'm uncomfortable with, only because it's not something that I'm not used to, and I'll explain that better. I mean, I was brought up in a mostly white neighborhood. For the majority of my childhood, at least. I went to a predominantly white school. And then even after school, I went to Miami University, and there were a few black people there. Most of the black people that attended that university were athletes. Even in my entire hallway, I remember walking in the first day my freshman year, moving in, I was the only black person in my whole hallway.
Yeah.
And it's just like, these aren't situations that's new to me.
Well, even in Denver.
Even in living in Denver, especially working in the tech scene.
Yeah,
my God, there's not a black person in sight, and here I am.
There was a lot of head nodding, or when we would go to these tech conferences or tech meetings or whatever. Like, I feel like you and whoever the other black person in the room,
immediately
we would find each other,
and we start cracking jokes, and because that's just how it is. It's crazy. It's that sense of unity, which is a beautiful thing amongst black. I love that. Like, I love that everywhere in the world. It doesn't matter what language you speak. Yeah, even when we were coming here to Budva, I saw someone in the bus station. He looked at me, I looked at him. The nod. It just happens.
Like an instant connection.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what's funny? You asked me that question. I was speaking to one of my cousins the other day, who even told me, he said, you should write a blog about being black abroad. And he was like, because not enough black people in the States know what it's like, and therefore they may not travel because of that. And even the comic, last night, the woman was saying, I can't travel. I can only travel to, London.
She said live. I don't want to live where I'm the only black person, is what she said. So she's like, I can live in London, I can live in
the States,
the United States, and I can live in Africa.
And that's funny that she said that.
Those are the three.
What's really funny about her saying that, I can't remember her name. But what's funny that she said that is just because it doesn't. I stick out in Varna like a sore thumb because I'm the only black person. But the crazy thing is, when I lived in Tanzania, I still stuck out like a sore thumb.
Right.
I've been
that too, though.
Yeah, everywhere I've lived, I've stuck out, and it's like, you know what? I'll use this opportunity, the sticking out opportunity, to show them who I am and how I am, and I'm a person of love, and like I said, in Tanzania, at the school that I was teaching music at, I would go for village walks with the kids because they'd be very excited. Come see my home. Come to my home.
So cute.
And so I remember one day I was walking through the village with one child who was showing me his home. It was cool. And then I remember coming back to the school, and one of the parents grabbed me and walked up to the director of the school. There were 3 white American girls working at the school, but they spoke better Kiswahili than I do.
Yeah.
And the parent goes, "Why does he look like us, but he cannot speak our language?"
Yeah.
And even the kids at the school were very confused because I was the first black volunteer that had actually gone and worked at the school. And we're talking about a very small village who doesn't necessarily have
They
the
don't have,
best
like,
ties.
cable TV. They have a couple movies.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, they're learning American culture through the movies they watch.
Old movies.
Old
movies that are
Oh,
predominantly
God.
white people, right?
Predominantly white
Yeah.
actors. So it's like, some of them thought that only white people lived in America, and I had to. And they even asked me. They said, "Yes, you were black, but your parents, they're
They
white."
must be white.
And I'm
they
like,
must
"Oh
have brought
my
you from here. They must
God."
have adopted you, right?
So I remember walking around this village, and I'd have to show them pictures of my brother and my family. Like, my
Right.
parents, like, "No, my family is black. I'm black. There are black people living in America," and it was just shocking. So it's like, even being black in Africa, I stuck out. Like,
Yeah.
being black in Varna was no different. It's something I'm used to, and so.
So do you feel like when you are traveling, not only do you have this, I don't know if I want to call it a responsibility, but do you feel this responsibility, as an American, to show that we are actually good people?
That's, God.
We aren't as materialistic as it looks,
Yeah.
Yeah, más o menos.
Yeah.
And also the responsibility of maybe debunking some stereotypes of black men or
Absolutely.
African American.
I mean, I like I was saying, I use those opportunities by sticking out to show them who us black people, how we are,
Right.
who we are. And so, like,
And you can't take on the whole community.
absolutely
but
not.
All you can do is show them.
my rendition. I can
Right.
show them through me, like, how I am as a black person.
Yeah.
And I use that, like I said, I use that as an opportunity. I do feel a responsibility to do that. It was funny. We had an encounter on the bus in Varna.
Oh my God.
There was an older gentleman. This is public transport, and Varna is a very poor country. And so there was an older gentleman who got on the bus with, like, 4 big bags, and it looked like everything he owned. Judging by his clothes, everything, it looked like everything this man owned. I was also very confused because in Bulgaria you shake your head this way to mean yes, and this to
it's
or no,
very confusing.
and this to mean no.
And when you don't know the language, all you have is your body language.
Exactly.
And the body language is even different.
And when you screw that up, your brain's
Your
twisted.
head is just rolling.
So yeah, like, sure enough, I thought it was everything he had. He got on the bus. I'm confused with the head nods. I see the bus woman go over to him to check to see if
Because they collect our money when we get onto the bus. Someone comes up and down.
They come up and down to take your money so you can pay for a ticket. She walked up to this man, and he showed her something, and she shook her head like this, and then stood right by him, and he was standing by the door, or sitting by the door, and I was like, oh my God, like, this guy doesn't have the 50 cents to even ride this bus. This woman's standing by him, and she's gonna kick him off at the next stop. Like, I had worked up this whole scenario in my head. I felt terrible for this man. So I reached in my pocket and grabbed my change, and I reached over to him, and I offered him.
And in my head, I thought you were thinking, this guy's homeless. I'm just going to offer him money.
Oh, God,
and he never
no.
even asked.
That'd be
having this
terrible.
internal thing like, wow, you're going to offend this man. This is going to be awful. And I'm feeling weird.
But see,
you're
the
feeling
difference
weird.
is
Yeah.
the biggest difference in our stories is that you didn't see
I didn't see that first part.
You didn't see
I
what
didn't see
happened.
the interaction between the-
exactly. And so I'm like my heart sunk. I'm like, there's no way this man. It's freezing outside.
It's so cool.
I'm like, there's no way I'm letting this man get kicked off his bus.
Right.
And so I reach over to give him, a coin for the bus, and he looks at me confused.
Right, like I thought he was like, I'm like, why? You're offending this person by giving him money.
Yeah, and everyone's looking at me strange, and I'm like, and I point to the woman, and I point back to the coin, like, and I grab my ticket. I'm using my best, what I have.
To have a
And then
conversation.
Good enough, he smiles, and he said no. And a big Bulgarian man sitting across from me was like, he started smiling. He's like, no, he has pass.
Pass, yeah.
And so some people have bus passes. So and when she shook her head like this, she meant like, yes, you're good.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking no. And so
and
either way,
then everybody in that scenario was laughing at the
It was,
end.
and they smiled.
Everybody was,
and for the rest of the
they
bus,
don't really smile
like,
very much
oh
there
God,
without
no.
being prompted.
It's like it's a sin.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the bus ride, I was getting these looks, but they were like warm looks, and I'm like, there we go. Like, there's one way that I just showed, like,
Compassion.
here's a black person, like,
yeah.
showing passion. I'm in your country. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you. And so, like, it was a learning moment for me with the head shakes too. But
yeah.
either way, like, I use these opportunities to try to display whatever I can.
And overall, how would you describe the vibe in Varna? And then artistically, how did that vibe influence you?
There was not. Well, there weren't really any street performers. It was so damn cold.
There
and
were some street
there were
performers,
some.
but
There was like
it's
two
too
of them.
cold to be.
It wasn't like a Granada where you see it on every block. There was like
Right.
literally two in the whole city center, and I mean, but there was great music, Bulgarian music, that we went to see. We went and saw a show in an attic in a yoga studio, and it was traditional Bulgarian music, and it was really cool to see the interaction. The guy played almost like a bagpipe, but it was a sheep's bladder. And it was like a horn, and
then
they had drums and hand drums and people
singing,
dancing.
Lots of singing. Oh
Yep.
yeah, they did the
hora,
Yeah.
and even on New Year's night, once the clock strikes, midnight for the New Year, everyone dances the hora in Bulgaria. It's the traditional dance and like welcoming the New Year. That was really cool, which is great. It's art. Where we lived, like I said, it was so far out of town and so far in the dark. There was not much. It wasn't nearly as creatively inspiring, but it was more so an incubator because in Bulgaria, I stayed inside our apartment most of the time and I just studied. I studied guitar, learned different styles, like just
Both
use
of
this
us
time to
really
study.
use it. Practice, study, dive into it. So
And it was cold as hell to even go outside. So it's like I can't play outside. And even if I did, I don't even know if I'm allowed to here. I don't see many people doing it. So I just used those 2 months and I just honed in on my
skills. People were a lot more
skills.
serious there.
Oh, yeah.
It was harder to get a smile, whereas you walk up and down in Spain, there was a lot of smiling, laughing.
Oh, there was drinking outside. There were people, come on, like, it's La Vida. It's like before anything, like people live life there. They live life before, work, which is great. They had a beautiful balance there. And yeah, the vibe was definitely more serious in Varna.
It was more serious, but they have more of a historical background.
They do.
For that. I mean, Spain has their own historical background and how the pain and suffering that they went through, they turned it into like live in the moment, music, life, dancing, being with friends and family. Yeah. Whereas Varna, I think it's just more of a serious, like.
Well, it's also more
vibe,
recent. Right? I mean, I think it wasn't until 86 or 87 that they became a democracy or whatever form of government they have. Yeah. But it wasn't until 86, 87.
When the Berlin Wall came down.
Exactly. And so for a long time they were under communistic rule. And I learned so much. I actually taught at a school in Bulgaria. And that was also really interesting. I just walked around to the different schools and I said, hey, I'm from America. I teach English. I have a certificate. I taught English in Spain. I taught English online.
Right. I'm here for 2 months.
I'm here for 2 months. Exactly. And sure enough, I landed a job that way. And I was speaking with the owner of that school. And we had such interesting conversations because I was the first American teacher they had hired because they're teaching the British style English there. Yeah. And then B, she let me know that she had to pass on hiring black teachers in the past because of the way that the parents would view it and see it. And I was definitely the first black teacher at this school. And I
think what's interesting about that is she couldn't hire, or she didn't want to hire because of the reaction of the parents. But tell us, I mean, you got some reaction from the parents. What were those reactions?
I did, but it actually turned out very positive. She asked me if I could stay another 2 months and keep teaching by the time we left because the children really liked me. I just had a different style, obviously, than they had seen before. Right. One of the little girls told her parents that she couldn't stop staring at my curls. Yeah. And so like while I was teaching there, the owner had parent-teacher conferences. And the teachers the parents gave their feedback on me, and it was all very positive. The kids liked me, and it was refreshing. It was new. It was different. Yeah. And there was no negativity, which was really cool. And once again, like I used that standing out for like a positive way to show, hey, like this is who we are. Like don't get it twisted. We're good people. Like give us a chance.
I don't necessarily think that they were.
It was like fear of the unknown. Yeah. Fear of the unknown.
Yeah. Exactly. Like they didn't have, like in the States, I think there's the racism comes from a history of
it's like systemic
tension.
There's so much. Yeah.
Where them in that situation, that was just, I actually would tell people it's like Jarrod's an alien here. They're
Yeah.
looking at him like they have never seen.
Oh, the littlest kids, like the little young kids. Oh my God,
Yeah.
you could see their little minds explode in their heads.
That was cute though. The
It was.
curiosity.
They would just see me as,
Yeah.
and I would, no matter where I walked, their head just
Yeah.
what, how, where did he come from?
But from an outsider perspective, as far as like I can't experience what you're experiencing, but I do witness it and see it.
You witness it more than I do, because once
Right.
I get used to it, I'm like, whatever. I throw my
There was
blinders
a guy
on.
following you in the grocery store one time.
Oh,
in Varna,
man.
and that was very uncomfortable for me because, as a woman, when a man follows you around like that, it's not a good sign.
And when they're invading your personal space at the same time,
so
like,
for me, I went to that like, okay, as a woman, if someone was following me around, I would feel weird. Now him and his situation, but the guy was doing it out of curiosity.
He
and
was.
He was like praying for you and like.
he was praying, he
and
was shaking my hand,
it was
blessing me,
interesting.
and it was almost like, it sounded like he was speaking Italian or praying in Italian.
Yeah.
And
I'm not really sure
patri
what
santi,
yeah.
and I'm like, what is happening? And I'm in the grocery, like, I'm just trying to get some food.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, like, and then when I was paying for my groceries, he waited at the exit. He does not work at this grocery store.
I know.
Stood by the exit, waited for me to come by and shook my hand one more time, gave me these smiles, and it was
Yeah.
just, like I said, like, in going back to what my cousin said about being black abroad, like, a lot of black people don't know this, but it's like, once you understand these things and understand that it's not negative connotations, these vibes, these
Or where they're
looks,
coming
where it's
from.
once you
Yeah.
understand that, it just makes it more easy and comfortable, and you use that as an opportunity. And I have a lot of my extended family, my immediate family. They've been watching our travels, and they have been extremely supportive. I love them for that, and
Yeah.
I just constantly beg them, like, by all means, like, get out of the States, like, go somewhere that is completely foreign, be uncomfortable, because that is the only way to make yourself grow. And by going to so many uncomfortable situations, I feel like you're growing as a human being.
Right. And not everybody can just pick up and leave.
Very true.
Because there is the aspect of we don't have any, like people have homes and
Yeah,
cars and they
they
can't
do.
just like pick up and leave. So I think an alternative to that would be, and I've watched this on, all the programs I listen to and watch about trying to be a better person and whatnot, but experiencing different cultures could be as much as like, if you're a white person and you have a black friend, like go to their home and have dinner with them and like just engross yourself in a different experience, and vice versa. Like
Go to different events. Go to cultural events in your own
There's
city
so
that
many-
are outside of your,
Yeah.
ethnic background.
you don't necessarily just have to travel the world to
If
experience
you
what you're-
can,
Yeah,
if you
I agree
can,
with you.
absolutely,
But-
because you will be 100% authentically in it.
Right, but there's
And
other ways to do it.
There are other
I
ways to
just
do it
want
as well.
to
There are cheaper,
say that.
free ways to do it.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to or anyone to please, by all means, it is a great way to grow as a person.
Right.
If you're comfortable where you are, then you're probably not growing. You're sitting stagnant. It might work for you,
Yeah.
but you're just on a line. Like, shake it up.
Yeah.
Shake it up.
Cool. Okay. Out of the 3 cities that we just discussed, well, today we're filming in
Budva.
Montenegro.
Which
and
so
we'll-
far has been beautiful.
Right, and we'll talk about that the next episode. But of the 3 cities that we've lived so far, Barcelona, Granada, and Varna, which is your favorite and why?
Granada was so artfully and artistically incredible, and the connections I've made there, and just the music, the everything, the vibes, the people, the cost of living, the neighborhood we lived in, the Alhambra, like everything, the weather, the beauty. It was great, and I do miss the people that I played with. So yeah, definitely Granada.
I would agree with you.
It's
For
my heart.
mostly the same thing. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Tell us how people can follow you and use the guitar lessons. Tell them how they can go about connecting with you.
If you want to connect with me, I'm on Facebook. You can look up Jarrod Music, and that's Jarrod. Or you can follow me on Instagram at JWardMusic, and that's JAY Ward Music.
And they can message you directly
They
there
can
for
message
guitar.
me directly.
And I'll put that in the comments below so that you can contact him.
Ciao.
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 I'll put that in the message below so that you can contact him directly if you have any questions about travel or if you want to do a guitar lesson. Also, check out my website, my blog, Hanna Kohfeld and artfuljourney.com to follow us on our journey. Subscribe below to watch more videos and episodes like this where we discuss what it's like to travel. And thank you for watching. Look forward to talking about